The wedding dress hung in the corner of the small boarding house room like a ghost. Its lace yellowed with age and borrowed from a woman 3 doors down who had worn it to her own ceremony 15 years prior. Rebecca Turner stared at it through eyes that had not closed properly in 2 nights, her fingers worrying at the hem of her simple cotton dress, while the late afternoon sun of August, 1882, cast long shadows across the wooden floor. She had saved for 3 years working at the general store in Sierra City, California. Every coin carefully placed in the tin box beneath her bed, dreaming of the day she would marry Thomas Weatherby, the charming salesman who had ridden into town with promises as golden as his tongue and a smile that could make a woman forget her own name. The tin box sat empty on the dresser now, and Thomas was nowhere to be found. Rebecca had discovered the truth that morning when she went to withdraw the money to pay for the church, the reverend's fee, the simple reception at the hotel dining room, and the new boots Thomas insisted he needed to look proper for their wedding day. $347 gone. Mrs. Henderson at the boarding house had seen Thomas leaving at dawn 2 days ago with his leather satchel bulging, heading not toward his supposed meeting with a merchant, but toward the saloon district, where high-stakes poker games ran until the morning light. She pressed her palm against her chest, trying to steady the wild beating of her heart. The wedding was supposed to be tomorrow. She had sent word to her aunt in Sacramento, to the few cousins scattered across California, to everyone who mattered. The Reverend expected payment today. The hotel required a deposit. She had nothing. The knock on her door came softly, and she turned, expecting Mrs. Henderson with more sympathetic platitudes and perhaps a cup of tea she did not want. Instead, when she opened the door, she found herself looking at a stranger, though she had seen him around town these past few weeks. He was tall, with dark hair that touched his collar and eyes the color of the mountain sky just before sunset. He held his hat in his hands, turning it nervously. "Miss Turner," he said, his voice low and careful, "I apologize for the intrusion. My name is Isaac Thornton. I work at the cattle ranch north of town. I heard about your situation and I wanted to offer my assistance." Rebecca felt heat flood her cheeks. "The whole town knows then." "Not the whole town," Isaac said gently. "But Mrs. Henderson mentioned it to Mr. Parker at the general store, and I happened to overhear. I know it is not my place, and you do not know me, but I cannot stand by when someone is in distress." "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Thornton, but there is nothing to be done. Thomas will return and we will sort this out." Even as she spoke the words, she knew they were hollow. Thomas had taken everything. He was not coming back. Isaac looked at her with such open sympathy that she nearly broke then, nearly let the tears she had been holding fall. "Miss Turner, I saw Thomas Weatherby this morning at the train station. He was boarding the eastbound train with a woman in a green dress. I am sorry to be the one to tell you, but I do not believe he is coming back." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Rebecca gripped the door frame, her knuckles white. A woman in a green dress. The words echoed in her mind like a bell tolling. She had suspected the gambling, had worried about the money, but this betrayal cut deeper than she had imagined possible. "I see," she managed to say, though her voice sounded far away even to her own ears. "He does not deserve you, miss," Isaac said quietly. "Any man who would treat a woman so shamefully does not deserve a moment of your grief." Rebecca looked up at him, this stranger with kind eyes and work-roughened hands who had taken the time to climb the stairs of a boarding house to tell her a truth that must have been difficult to speak. "Why are you here, Mr. Thornton?" "Truly," he met her gaze steadily, "because I have watched you these past weeks while I have been in town on ranch business. I have seen how you greet every customer at the general store with patience and kindness." I have seen you help the Martinez children with their reading on Sunday afternoons. I have seen you feed the stray dog that lives behind the blacksmith shop. And I cannot fathom how any man could have your love and throw it away so carelessly. I am here because it is the right thing to do, and because I believe you deserve better." She did not know what to say. No one had ever spoken to her like that, with such earnest conviction. Thomas had been charming, yes, but his words had always felt practiced, like lines in a play. Isaac spoke as though every word cost him something. "I still have no money for the wedding," she said finally. "Even if I wanted to proceed, which I do not, I cannot pay the reverend or the hotel." "Cancel it all," Isaac said. "Send word to your family that the wedding is postponed. Take some time to breathe. And when you are ready, perhaps you might allow me to call on you properly. I know I am just a ranch hand, and I do not have fancy words or expensive clothes. But I work hard, I have saved my wages, and I would never treat you with anything less than the respect you deserve." Rebecca stared at him. This was madness. She did not know this man. Yet something in his steady gaze, in the honest concern written across his face, made her want to trust him. She had trusted Thomas, and look where that had led, but Thomas had been all flash and performance. Isaac seemed solid, real, like the earth beneath her feet. "I need time to think," she said. "Of course." He placed a small leather pouch in her hand before she could protest. "This is enough to cover what you owe for the cancellations. Consider it a loan if it makes you feel better, though I would give it freely. No woman should be left in debt because of a man's poor character." He turned and walked down the hallway before she could respond, his boots echoing on the wooden boards. Rebecca stood in her doorway, holding the pouch, feeling the weight of coins inside. She did not count them. She simply closed her door, walked to her bed, and finally let herself cry. The next day, Rebecca went to the church and spoke with Reverend Matthews, a kindly man in his 60s who had baptized half the children in Sierra City. He listened to her story without judgment, nodded sympathetically, and assured her that he required no payment for a ceremony that would not take place. The hotel manager was less understanding, but when Rebecca offered him the money from Isaac's pouch, he accepted and even returned a portion, saying he could rebook the dining room for a miners' association dinner. By evening, Rebecca had sent telegrams to her relatives explaining that the wedding was canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. She did not elaborate. The humiliation was enough without having to detail Thomas's betrayal across telegraph lines. She returned to the boarding house as the sun set, painting the Sierra Nevada mountains in shades of gold and purple. Mrs. Henderson met her at the door with a concerned expression. "There is a man waiting for you in the parlor, dear. That ranch hand, Mr. Thornton. I told him it might not be appropriate so soon, but he insisted he only needed a moment of your time." Rebecca found Isaac sitting on the edge of the settee, his hat on his knee, looking uncomfortable in the feminine space of lace doilies and floral wallpaper. He stood when she entered. "Miss Turner, I apologize for calling again so soon. I wanted to make sure you were all right and to tell you that if you need anything at all, anything, you can send word to the Patterson Ranch north of town. I will help however I can." "You have already helped more than you know," Rebecca said, sitting in the chair across from him. "I was able to settle my debts. The Reverend was very kind about the church. I am no longer engaged to be married, but at least I am not destitute." "Good." He seemed to relax slightly. "I am glad. I know this must be a very difficult time. Mr. Thornton, why are you truly doing this? You do not know me. I could be anyone." He was quiet for a moment, looking down at his hat, then back up at her. "My mother was engaged once before she met my father. The man took her dowry and disappeared. She was fortunate that my father had known her since childhood and had always cared for her. He helped her through that dark time, and eventually they fell in love. Real love, not the kind built on pretty words and false promises. They were married for 30 years before she passed. He told me once that the greatest honor of his life was being the man worthy of her trust after it had been broken. When I heard what happened to you, I thought of my mother. I thought maybe I could be that person for you, if you would let me. Rebecca felt something loosen in her chest, some tight knot of pain that had been choking her. That is a beautiful story. It is a true one. He stood, settling his hat back on his head. I will leave you to rest. But Miss Turner, if you find yourself in need of company, or a ride out to see the countryside, or simply someone to talk to who will not judge you for what has happened, I am at your service. She walked him to the door, and as he stepped out into the evening air, she found herself saying, "Mr. Thornton, would you call me Rebecca?" He turned, and she saw the slow smile that spread across his face, transforming it from handsome to something that made her heart skip. "Only if you will call me Isaac." "Isaac," she repeated, and it felt right on her tongue, solid and true. "Thank you." The following weeks passed in a strange sort of limbo. Rebecca returned to work at the general store, enduring the curious looks and whispered conversations of the townspeople. Some were sympathetic, others seemed to take pleasure in her misfortune. She held her head high and did her work, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. Isaac came to town every few days, always with some excuse about ranch business or supplies needed. He would stop by the general store, tip his hat to her, make a small purchase and leave. But on Sunday afternoons, when she finished her volunteer work with the Martinez children, he was there with his horse and a gentle mare from the ranch, offering to show her the beautiful country around Sierra City. At first, she declined, unsure if she was ready. But after the third invitation, she accepted, and they rode out into the foothills, the August heat giving way to the cooler air of elevation. Isaac did not press her with questions or try to fill every silence with chatter. He simply rode beside her, pointing out landmarks, sharing stories about the ranch and the cattle drives, asking about her family and her dreams. "I always wanted to own a small bookshop," Rebecca confessed as they paused beside a creek, letting the horses drink. "My father taught me to read when I was very young, and I fell in love with stories. I thought maybe one day I could share that love with others." "That sounds wonderful," Isaac said. "Sierra City could use a good bookshop. Most folks have to order from Sacramento or San Francisco." It was a foolish dream. I was saving money for it, but then I met Thomas, and he convinced me that marriage should come first. He said we would save together after the wedding, that he would help me achieve my dream. She laughed bitterly. Instead, he took my savings and disappeared. Isaac was quiet for a moment, then said, "It was not a foolish dream. And it is not gone just because one man betrayed you. You can save again. You can build again. Dreams do not die unless we let them." She looked at him, sitting easy in his saddle, his profile strong against the backdrop of mountains. "How did you become so wise?" "Long hours on horseback with nothing but my thoughts," he said, and there was humor in his voice. "And a father who never let me wallow in self-pity when things went wrong. He always said that character is built in how we respond to hardship, not in how we enjoy success." They rode back to town as the sun began to set, and when Isaac helped her down from the mare, his hands lingered at her waist for just a moment longer than necessary. She felt the warmth of his touch even through her riding jacket, and when she met his eyes, she saw something there that made her breath catch. "Same time next week?" he asked softly. "Yes," she said. "I would like that." September arrived with cooler temperatures and the promise of autumn. The leaves on the cottonwoods along the creek began to turn gold, and the evening air carried the scent of wood smoke from kitchen stoves. Rebecca found herself thinking of Isaac constantly, counting the days until Sunday, looking forward to their rides together. He courted her properly, with a slow patience that Thomas had never shown. He brought her wildflowers picked from the meadows near the ranch. He listened when she talked about her day, remembered small details she had mentioned in passing. He introduced her to his friends from the ranch, good men who treated her with respect and clearly thought highly of Isaac. One evening in late September, Isaac took her to dinner at the hotel, the same place where she would have had her wedding reception to Thomas. She hesitated at the entrance, the memories still painful, but Isaac squeezed her hand gently. "We can go somewhere else if you prefer," he said. But I thought perhaps it was time to make new memories in old places. She straightened her shoulders and walked inside with him. They sat at a table by the window overlooking the main street, and as they ate and talked and laughed together, Rebecca realized that Isaac was right. The past did not have to poison the present. She could choose to move forward. "Tell me about the ranch," she said, sipping her coffee. "You talk about the cattle and the work, but what is it really like living out there?" Isaac leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant with memory. "It is hard work, no question. Long days, difficult weather, ornery animals. But there is something honest about it. You see the results of your labor. You build something real. And the land, Rebecca, the land is beautiful in a way that gets into your bones. The sky seems bigger out there. The stars at night are so bright you could read by them. There is a freedom to it that I cannot quite explain." "It sounds wonderful," she said wistfully. "Come see it," he said suddenly, leaning forward. "Come to the ranch next Sunday. Meet Mrs. Patterson, the owner. See where I live and work. I think you would like it." She hesitated. Going to the ranch felt significant, like crossing some invisible line. But she wanted to see his world, wanted to understand the place that had shaped him. "All right, I would like that." The following Sunday, Isaac arrived with a small wagon instead of the horses. "More comfortable for the longer ride," he explained, helping her up onto the seat. They drove north out of Sierra City, following the road that wound through stands of pine and open meadows where cattle grazed. The Patterson Ranch lay nestled in a valley with mountains rising on three sides, a sprawling operation with a large house, several barns, and corrals full of horses and cattle. Mrs. Patterson turned out to be a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She greeted Rebecca warmly, invited her into the ranch house for tea, and proceeded to tell stories about Isaac that made him blush and Rebecca laugh until her sides ached. "He is too modest to tell you himself," Mrs. Patterson said, pouring more tea, "but Isaac is the best foreman I have ever had. He has a gift with horses, can read weather like an almanac, and the men respect him. When my husband passed 5 years ago, I did not know if I could keep the ranch running. Isaac made it possible." "You are too kind, Mrs. Patterson," Isaac protested. "I am truthful, young man, and you know it." She turned to Rebecca. "He has not brought a woman to the ranch before. You must be very special." Rebecca felt her cheeks warm. "Isaac has been very kind to me during a difficult time." "Kind, yes, but also smitten," Mrs. Patterson said with a knowing smile. "I have eyes in my head. He talks about you constantly. Rebecca said this, Rebecca did that. It is good to see him happy." After tea, Isaac showed Rebecca around the ranch, introducing her to the horses in the stable, including a young filly he was training. "She is wild yet, but smart. She will be a fine riding horse when she learns to trust." "Like people," Rebecca said softly, reaching out to stroke the filly's nose. Isaac moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "Yes, like people. Trust takes time, especially when it has been broken. But it can be rebuilt, stronger than before. She turned to look at him and found him already watching her. The late afternoon sun slanted through the stable door, illuminating the dust motes in the air, and in that golden light, Rebecca saw everything she needed to know written in his expression. He loved her. This man who had come to her as a stranger, who had helped her without asking for anything in return, who had courted her with patience and respect, loved her. "Isaac," she whispered. He reached up and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his calloused fingers tender against her skin. "I know it has not been long. I know you are still healing from what Thomas did. But Rebecca, I need you to know that I love you. I have loved you since the first time I saw you helping those children with their reading, your face so patient and kind. I will wait as long as you need. I just needed you to know." Her eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of sadness. "I love you too," she said, and realized as she spoke the words that they were absolutely true. What she had felt for Thomas had been infatuation, a foolish girl's dream of romance. What she felt for Isaac was deeper, rooted in genuine respect and admiration and the simple joy of being in his presence. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears on her cheeks. "May I kiss you?" "Yes," she breathed, and when his lips met hers, it felt like coming home. They were married in November, a simple ceremony at the church with Mrs. Henderson, Mrs. Patterson, the Martinez family, and a few close friends in attendance. Rebecca wore a new dress, simple but pretty, paid for with money she had started saving again for her bookshop. Isaac wore his Sunday best, his hair neatly trimmed, his face shining with happiness. Reverend Matthews performed the ceremony with genuine pleasure, declaring that it did his heart good to see two people so clearly meant for each other. When Isaac slipped the simple gold band onto Rebecca's finger, his hands were steady, his voice clear and strong as he made his vows. They held the reception at the ranch, Mrs. Patterson having insisted and refusing to hear any arguments. The ranch hands had decorated the barn with lanterns and autumn leaves, and there was music and dancing and food aplenty. Rebecca danced with her new husband under the glow of lamplight, his arms strong around her, and felt a happiness so pure it almost hurt. "Are you happy, Mrs. Thornton?" Isaac murmured against her hair. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," she said truthfully. They spent their wedding night in the small foreman's cottage on the ranch property, a cozy space with a fireplace and a comfortable bed. Isaac was gentle with her, patient and loving, and Rebecca understood for the first time what it meant to truly give yourself to someone who cherished you. In the morning, they lay tangled together in the warm bed, listening to the sounds of the ranch waking up around them. Rebecca traced patterns on Isaac's chest, marveling at this new intimacy, this person who was now hers. "I have been thinking," Isaac said, his voice rumbling under her ear. "Mrs. Patterson mentioned that the old land office building in town is available for rent. It is small, but it has good light and it is on the main street. It might make a good bookshop." Rebecca propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. "Isaac, I could not ask you to do that. We need to save for our future, for a home of our own someday. We have a home right here for as long as we want it. Mrs. Patterson has made that clear. And Rebecca, your dream matters. It is not just foolishness. You could bring something valuable to this community. Let me help you make it happen." She felt tears prick her eyes again. "You really believe in me?" "I really do." He pulled her down for a kiss. "We will build it together, your dream and mine." The winter passed in a blur of work and planning. Rebecca continued at the general store during the day while Isaac worked the ranch. But in the evenings and on Sundays, they went to town together, and worked on transforming the old land office into a bookshop. They painted the walls a warm cream color, built sturdy shelves from lumber Isaac sourced from the mill, and ordered books from suppliers in San Francisco and Sacramento. Rebecca pored over catalogs by lamplight, carefully selecting titles she thought the people of Sierra City would enjoy. Novels and poetry, yes, but also practical books on farming and ranching, medical texts, school books for children, and Bibles for the many religious families in the area. Isaac proved surprisingly handy at carpentry, building her a beautiful counter for the front of the shop and comfortable chairs where customers could sit and browse. He carved a sign for the front that read "Turner's Books" in elegant letters. "Not Thornton's Books?" Rebecca asked when she saw it. "It is your dream," Isaac said simply. "Your name should be on it." The bookshop opened in March of 1883 on a bright spring day with the scent of pine and wildflowers in the air. It seemed the entire town turned out for the grand opening, curious to see what the woman who had been jilted and then married a ranch hand had created. Rebecca stood behind her new counter, Isaac beside her, and greeted each customer with warmth and enthusiasm. By the end of the day, she had sold 43 books and taken orders for 24 more. Mrs. Martinez bought school books for her children. Mr. Fletcher from the bank purchased a collection of Shakespeare. Even the miners stopped in, and several left with adventure novels tucked under their arms. "You did it," Isaac said that night as they closed up the shop, his arm around her waist. "You really did it." "We did it," she corrected, leaning into him. "I could never have done this without you." The bookshop flourished over the following months. Rebecca proved to have a gift for matching customers with the perfect book, and word spread throughout the region. People came from other towns to visit Turner's Books, to browse the carefully curated selection and talk with the knowledgeable owner. In July, Rebecca realized she was pregnant. She told Isaac one evening after supper, watching nervously for his reaction. His face went through a series of expressions: shock, wonder, joy, and then he whooped with happiness and picked her up and spun her around despite her laughing protests. "We are going to be parents," he said, setting her down carefully as though she were made of glass. "Rebecca, we are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" she asked, though she could see the answer in his eyes. Happy does not begin to cover it. He knelt down and pressed a kiss to her still flat stomach. "Hello in there, little one. Your father loves you already." Their son was born in March of 1884, a healthy boy with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes. They named him James, after Isaac's father, and he was welcomed into the world surrounded by love. Rebecca took a few months away from the bookshop after James was born, and during that time, Mrs. Patterson helped manage the store along with a young woman from town named Sarah, whom Rebecca had hired. Isaac split his time between the ranch and home, devoted to both his work and his new family. The first time Rebecca saw Isaac holding their son, sitting in the rocking chair by the fire with the baby cradled against his chest, singing softly, she felt her heart might burst with love. This man, this good, honest, hard-working man who had come to her in her darkest moment and offered help without expecting anything in return, was now her husband and the father of her child. "What are you thinking?" Isaac asked, looking up to find her watching from the doorway. "I am thinking about how different my life could have been," she said softly. "If Thomas had not stolen my money and disappeared, if you had not come to my door that day, I might have married him and spent my life with a man who did not truly love me, who would have broken my heart over and over. And I would never have found you." Isaac stood carefully, cradling the sleeping baby, and came to her. "I used to wonder sometimes if I should have spoken up earlier, before you got engaged. I saw you around town for months before Thomas arrived, and I admired you from afar. But I thought you were too fine for a ranch hand. Then he came along with his fancy clothes and smooth words, and I thought I had lost my chance. When I heard what he did to you, I was furious, but also, I am ashamed to say, hopeful. Is that terrible of me?" "No," Rebecca said, reaching up to touch his face. "It is human, and I am grateful that you found the courage to come to my door. You saved me, Isaac, in every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," he said, and kissed her forehead. The years that followed were full and rich. The bookshop continued to thrive, becoming a gathering place for the community. Rebecca started a reading circle for women, and later, a story hour for children on Saturday mornings. The shop expanded into the adjoining building, doubling in size. Isaac was promoted to full partner in the Patterson ranch operation when Mrs. Patterson decided it was time to step back from the day-to-day work. He poured his heart into the ranch, improving the breeding program, expanding the herd, and mentoring the younger ranch hands. They had 2 more children, a daughter named Elizabeth in 1886 and another son, Samuel, in 1889. The foreman's cottage that had seemed so cozy when it was just the 2 of them became cramped with 3 children, so they built a house on a piece of land Mrs. Patterson sold them at a generous price, midway between the ranch and town. It was a beautiful house with a wide porch and views of the mountains, with enough bedrooms for their growing family, and a study lined with bookshelves where Rebecca could retreat to read and do the accounts for the shop. Isaac built much of it himself with help from the ranch hands, pouring his love into every board and nail. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they sat on the porch of their new home, watching the sun set over the Sierra Nevada while their children played in the yard. James was chasing butterflies, Elizabeth was picking wildflowers, and baby Samuel dozed in Rebecca's arms. "You ever think about what happened with Thomas?" Isaac asked, his hand finding hers. "Sometimes," Rebecca admitted. "Not with pain anymore, but with a strange sort of gratitude. He taught me what I did not want. He showed me the difference between pretty words and true character, and his betrayal led me directly to you. So in a way, I am thankful for him, even though what he did was terrible." "I hope he found whatever he was looking for," Isaac said. "But mostly, I hope he knows what he lost. Because, Rebecca, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. These past 5 years, building a life with you, raising our children, creating something meaningful together, this is everything I ever wanted." "I love you," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for seeing me when I was broken and believing I was worth putting back together." "You were never broken," Isaac said firmly. "You were wounded, yes, but never broken. Your strength, your kindness, your spirit, those were always intact. I just had the privilege of being there while you healed." As the sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and pink, Rebecca reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The pain of Thomas's betrayal had felt insurmountable at the time, like the end of her world. But it had actually been a beginning, the first step on a path that led to genuine love, to partnership, to a life richer than any she had imagined. The years continued to pass in a rhythm of seasons and celebrations. James grew into a thoughtful boy who loved books as much as his mother, often found with his nose in a novel when he should have been doing chores. Elizabeth was spirited and adventurous, preferring to ride horses with her father than sit inside. Samuel was quiet and observant, with a gift for drawing that became apparent when he was barely old enough to hold a pencil. The bookshop celebrated its 10th anniversary in 1893, and the town threw a party to honor Rebecca's contribution to the community. She stood in her shop, surrounded by friends and neighbors, with Isaac's arm around her waist and her children at her side, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "I want to say a few words," she announced, and the crowd quieted. 10 years ago, I stood in a boarding house room with an empty tin box and a broken heart, thinking my life was over. I had lost my savings, my fiancé, and my faith in love. Then a stranger came to my door and offered me kindness when I needed it most. That stranger became my husband, my partner, my best friend. Isaac Thornton, you are the reason this shop exists. You are the reason I am standing here today. You believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself. Thank you for every day of these past 10 years. There was not a dry eye in the shop, and Isaac pulled her close, not caring who was watching. You give me too much credit, he murmured. You did the work. You built this. We built it together, she insisted. Everything good in my life, we built together. That night, after the party had ended and the children were asleep, Rebecca and Isaac walked through their house, pausing to look in on each sleeping child. James sprawled across his bed with a book fallen from his hand. Elizabeth was curled up with her favorite stuffed horse. Samuel slept with his drawings scattered across his blanket. We made this, Rebecca whispered. These beautiful children, this home, this life. We made it from nothing but hope and hard work and love. Best thing I ever made, Isaac agreed, pulling her into the bedroom they shared. Though I am fairly certain you did most of the work on the children. She laughed and swatted his arm. You helped. I did my best. He pulled her close, his hands familiar and warm on her waist. Rebecca, I want you to know something. Every single day I wake up grateful. Grateful that Thomas Weatherby was foolish enough to let you go. Grateful that I found the courage to knock on your door. Grateful for every moment I get to spend as your husband. I am grateful too, she said, reaching up to touch his face, feeling the lines that time and sun had etched there. For all of it, even the hard parts, because they led me here. They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity, knowing each other's bodies as well as their own. Afterward, lying in the darkness with Isaac's steady breathing beside her, Rebecca thought about the girl she had been, the one who thought pretty words and a charming smile were enough. That girl had not known what real love looked like. She had confused excitement with depth, infatuation with commitment. Now she knew better. Real love was Isaac getting up before dawn to tend the stock in freezing weather. It was coming home exhausted and still making time to listen to their children's stories. It was working together on the bookshop accounts by lamplight, heads bent together over ledgers. It was 1,000 small moments of consideration and care, building day by day into something unshakable. In 1895, Mrs. Patterson passed away peacefully in her sleep, leaving the ranch to Isaac in recognition of his years of devoted service and skilled management. It was a staggering responsibility, and Isaac spent several sleepless nights worrying about whether he was up to the task. You have been running that ranch for years already, Rebecca reminded him. Mrs. Patterson knew exactly what she was doing. She trusted you with her life's work because you earned that trust. What if I fail? What if I make decisions that run it into the ground? You would not. Rebecca took his hands in hers. Isaac, you are the most capable, hardworking, thoughtful man I know. You will make mistakes sometimes, we all do, but you will learn from them. And you would not be alone. I will be here. The ranch hands who have worked with you for years will be here. We will figure it out together. He pulled her into a tight embrace. What would I do without you? Fortunately, you will never have to find out. Isaac proved to be an excellent ranch owner, fair with his workers, innovative in his methods, and respected throughout the region. The Patterson Ranch, which he kept the name out of respect for the woman who had given him his start, flourished under his leadership. The children grew and changed. James left for college in San Francisco in 1898, planning to study literature and possibly become a teacher. It broke Rebecca's heart a little to see him go, but she was immensely proud. Elizabeth, now 12, was already talking about working on the ranch full-time when she was older, much to Isaac's delight. Samuel, at 9, spent hours sketching the landscape around their home, capturing the mountains and meadows with remarkable skill. On a warm evening in June of 1899, Isaac and Rebecca celebrated their 14th wedding anniversary alone for the first time in years, the children having been sent to spend the night with friends. They rode out to the spot by the creek where Isaac had first told her he loved her, bringing a picnic supper and a bottle of wine. 14 years, Rebecca marveled, settling onto the blanket Isaac had spread on the grass. It feels like both forever and no time at all. I know what you mean. Isaac opened the wine and poured them each a glass. Some days I still feel like that nervous ranch hand climbing the stairs to knock on your door, terrified you would send me away. I almost did, Rebecca confessed. I was so caught up in my misery, so certain that my life was ruined. I nearly told you to leave. What changed your mind? She thought about it. Your eyes, I think. They were so kind, and you did not try to fix me or tell me everything would be fine. You just offered to help, no strings attached. That felt genuine in a way nothing had for a long time. I would have done anything for you, Isaac said quietly. From the very first moment I saw you, I had never believed in love at first sight before, but then there you were, and I was lost. I think I knew even then that you were different. It just took me some time to trust my own judgment again. Thomas had made me doubt everything. I am glad you found your way to trusting me. Best decision I ever made. Rebecca raised her glass. To 14 years and to many more. To us, Isaac agreed, clinking his glass against hers. They talked as the sun set and the stars emerged, reflecting on their years together, the challenges they had overcome, the joys they had shared. They spoke of their children's futures, their plans for the ranch and the bookshop, their dreams for the years to come. You ever regret it? Isaac asked as they lay side by side on the blanket, looking up at the vast expanse of stars. Marrying a ranch hand instead of someone with more money or status. Rebecca turned on her side to look at him, her expression fierce even in the starlight. Never, not once, not for a single moment. Isaac, you gave me everything that matters. Love, respect, partnership, a family, a home. You helped me build my dream. You have stood beside me through every joy and every sorrow. How could I possibly regret that? I just want you to be happy, he said. I want you to have the life you deserve. I have exactly the life I deserve because I worked for it alongside a man who believes in me. That is more than most women can say. I am happy, Isaac. Truly, deeply happy. He pulled her close and they lay together under the stars, listening to the creek burble past and the distant calls of night birds. This, Rebecca thought, was what she had been searching for all along without knowing it. Not grand gestures or flowery promises, but quiet moments of connection with someone who truly saw her and loved her for who she was. The turn of the century brought changes to Sierra City. The railroad expanded, bringing more people and more commerce. The town grew, new buildings going up along Main Street. The bookshop expanded again, and Rebecca hired 2 more employees to help manage the increased business. She began stocking magazines and newspapers as well, turning the shop into a hub of information and culture. Isaac's ranch continued to prosper, and he became a respected figure in the cattlemen's associations, traveling occasionally to Sacramento and San Francisco for conferences and meetings. He always brought Rebecca back small gifts from these trips, books she had mentioned wanting, or trinkets for the children. James graduated from college in 1902 and took a teaching position in Sacramento, but he visited often, bringing with him stories of the city and the larger world beyond the mountains. Elizabeth, true to her word, began working on the ranch as soon as she finished school, proving herself as capable as any of the male ranch hands. Samuel's artistic talents earned him a scholarship to an art school in San Francisco, where he studied landscape painting. The house that had once been filled with the noise and chaos of young children became quieter as the years passed. Rebecca and Isaac adjusted to this new phase of life, rediscovering the pleasure of each other's company without the constant demands of parenthood. On their 20th anniversary in 1903, their children surprised them by all coming home for a celebration. James brought his new wife, a teacher he had met in Sacramento. Elizabeth arrived straight from a cattle drive, dusty but grinning. Samuel came with a portfolio of paintings, including one of their house that made Rebecca cry. The party was held at the ranch, which had been so central to their lives together. Friends and family came from all over the region to celebrate. There were speeches and toasts, music and dancing, laughter and love filling every corner of the barn that had been decorated for the occasion. When it was Rebecca's turn to speak, she stood with Isaac's hand in hers and looked out at all the people who had been part of their journey. 20 years ago today, I stood in a church and promised to love and honor this man for the rest of my life. I had no idea then what that promise would mean, what joys and challenges we would face together. Isaac, you have been my rock, my partner, my greatest love. You saw worth in me when I could not see it in myself. You helped me build not just a business but a life full of meaning and purpose. Every good thing I have, we created together. Thank you for 20 years of love and laughter. Here is to 20 more. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. Isaac pulled her into his arms and kissed her soundly, not caring about the audience. When they finally broke apart, he was grinning. She says I helped her, but the truth is, she made me into the man I always wanted to be. Before Rebecca, I was just going through the motions, working hard but not really living. She taught me what it means to build something that matters, to invest in community, to open your heart even when it is scary. I am the luckiest man alive to call her my wife. The party continued long into the night, but eventually, Rebecca and Isaac slipped away to walk under the stars, needing a moment of quiet together. 20 years, Isaac mused. When I knocked on your door that day, I never imagined this, all of this. The family, the ranch, the bookshop, the life we built. What did you imagine? Rebecca asked. Honestly, I just hoped you would not slam the door in my face, he laughed. Everything beyond that has been a gift I never expected. We have been lucky, Rebecca said, but we also worked for this. We chose each other every day, even when it was hard. That matters. It does. Isaac stopped walking and turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Rebecca Turner Thornton, I love you more today than I did the day we married, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today. That is my promise to you for whatever years we have left. My love will keep growing. And mine for you, she whispered, standing on her toes to kiss him. They walked back to the party hand in hand, hearts full, surrounded by the people and the life they had built together from the ashes of heartbreak and betrayal. Rebecca thought about that girl in the boarding house room, the one with an empty tin box and a shattered dream. If she could go back and tell that girl what was waiting for her, that pain was not the end but the beginning, would she believe it? Probably not. Some things had to be lived to be understood. Some blessings came disguised as disasters. Some of the best things in life happen not despite our plans falling apart, but because of it. The years continued their steady march. Rebecca and Isaac grew older together, their hair turning silver, their faces lined with the marks of a life well lived. The bookshop passed to new management when Rebecca finally decided to retire at 60, though she still stopped by regularly to offer advice and browse the shelves. Isaac turned the day-to-day running of the ranch over to Elizabeth and her husband, though he still spent most mornings riding the property, unable to fully step away from the work he loved. They became grandparents, then great-grandparents, their house filling with noise and laughter during holiday gatherings. Rebecca read stories to the little ones just as she had to her own children, watching their faces light up with the magic of words. Isaac taught them to ride, patient and gentle just as he had always been. On a spring morning in 1919, 34 years after they had first met, Isaac and Rebecca sat together on the porch of their home, watching the sun rise over the mountains. Isaac had been feeling poorly lately, his heart not as strong as it once was, but on this morning he seemed at peace. "I want you to know something," he said, holding her hand. "I have no regrets, not a single one. This life we built, it was everything I ever wanted and more than I deserved." "Do not talk like that," Rebecca said, though her voice caught. "You are going to be fine. Maybe, maybe not. But either way, I need you to know, you are the best thing that ever happened to me, Rebecca. Loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "You saved me." "We saved each other," he corrected gently, just as he had so many times before. Isaac lived another 6 years, long enough to see all his grandchildren grown and to meet several great-grandchildren. He passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1925, with Rebecca beside him as she had been for 40 years. She grieved deeply, the loss of her partner leaving a hole in her life that nothing could fill. But she did not regret. She had loved deeply and been loved in return. She had built a life of meaning and purpose. She had raised children who grew into good, kind adults. She had contributed to her community. And she had spent 4 decades with a man who had proven every single day that he deserved her trust and her love. Rebecca lived another decade, surrounded by family, tending her garden and still reading voraciously. She passed away in her sleep in 1935 at the age of 75, her worn copy of Jane Eyre on her bedside table, the same book Isaac had given her on their first anniversary. The family buried her beside Isaac on a hill overlooking the ranch, under the vast Montana sky they had both loved. On her headstone, beneath her name and dates, was a simple inscription chosen by their children. She chose love and built a life of joy, and in the end that was the whole story. A woman betrayed who found the courage to trust again. A man who offered help without expecting anything in return. 2 people who chose each other, day after day, year after year, building something beautiful from broken pieces. It was not the life Rebecca had planned when she was young, but it was infinitely better than anything she could have imagined. Thomas Weatherby had taken her money and her naive dreams of romance. But Isaac Thornton had given her something far more valuable, a partnership built on respect, a love that deepened with time, and a life filled with purpose and meaning. In the end, Thomas's betrayal had been the best thing that ever happened to her, because it led her directly to the man who would prove what real love looked like. And that, Rebecca would have said if she could have spoken from beyond the grave, made all the pain worthwhile.